Welcome back, guys. So we're moving on to the actual board itself now. I'm going to skip over the tuner because I have covered that in another video before. But just to just say, definitely, out of all these pedals, this one's the only absolutely essential one. Get yourself a tuner pedal. Do it. Do it now. Okay, moving on from that. The EBS Multicomp. Now, compression is a well-debated effect, if you can even call it an effect, in bass circles. Some people absolutely swear by them, can't play without them. Some people say that they're completely useless and you don't need one at all. I would probably put myself somewhere in between those two camps. I prefer to have a compressor. I like having a compressor, but I wouldn't say it's an absolute essential for my board. So what a compressor does is takes your bass will have a certain dynamic range when just played acoustically, no amplification. It'll have a certain amount of distance between its quietest note and its loudest note. When you then run that through an amplifier, that dynamic range is suddenly hugely boosted. It's much wider, and that's a good thing. But it does mean that if you don't keep those dynamics under control, then they can get wildly out of hand. Now, what a compressor does is compress that dynamic range. It brings down when you get past a certain volume level or decibel level. It'll start reducing the amount that you can actually go beyond that. So, for instance, compressors work in ratios. Sort of 2 to 1 is the smallest, and they'll go up to anywhere up to infinity, which is basically won't allow you to get any louder beyond a certain point. But so take 2 to 1 ratio, for example. That means for what the signal you're putting in, if you gain 2 decibels on that, it'll only allow you to gain 1 decibel above that. So it'll keep those loud volume peaks just under control. Likewise, if you go below a certain threshold, it'll start boosting the volume of your quietest notes. So it kind of reduces down that dynamic range, and it does mean that if you put a compressor on too hard, then you can lose a lot of dynamics of your playing, which is something you want to avoid. I like to keep a compressor on at all times, but just running at a very low level. The Multicomp actually has quite a small range. The main control that you have over it is over the ratio, and I believe that goes from 2 to 1 to 5 to 1, which is actually quite a small range for a bass compressor. I'm running it at about 10, 11 o'clock there, so I'm guessing that's somewhere around a sort of 3.5 to 1 ratio, something like that. And that just means that most of the time when I'm playing, the compressor isn't actually doing anything. Now that does make it sound a little bit redundant, but bear with me. When I am playing, and specifically when I'm playing live, I like to have the compression on there, because when you're playing live, you can suddenly have very wild dynamic peaks. If you hit the bass too hard, it'll capture those peaks and just bring them down to a more manageable level. And it does make your bass just sort of sound a bit more smooth in a live setting. Also, with the lower threshold range, where you have a sustaining note, because when it goes below that low threshold, it'll start boosting the volume again. It does mean that you get more sustain out of your instrument, which is again a very good thing. So the EBS Multicomp I like a lot because it's a really simple pedal. You got one switch just for different modes. Keep it on the middle mode for myself, and then the compression control and a gain control, where your compression is bringing the volume down on your higher levels. Sometimes that means you can lose volume a bit when it is running, so you just boost up the gain a bit to even that out. And yeah, so I have it on those settings, and it just stays on all the time. I wouldn't say it's like the highest quality compressor. It is a very high quality compressor. I have an Aguilar TLC compressor which I use at home normally, and that's a much higher quality piece of kit, but it is more difficult to dial in. This one I like. It's a very nice compressor, and it's just really nice and simple. So it means if anything gets knocked or changed when I'm moving it in transit, live I can just get it set up in no time at all. So compression, I would say go to a shop, try some out. A good compressor, when it's working properly, you won't notice too much. So it is difficult to trial what a compressor sounds like. I'll just turn it off and give you a run. And then with the compressor on. So hopefully you won't have heard an awful lot of difference with that, which is a great demonstration of it, I suppose. Yeah, I've got it with a little bit of a volume boost overall, but yeah, it's just for those little dynamic peaks to keep those under control, and that's why I keep it there. It's not on the front of the board because I don't need to press it all the time, so it's just tucked there, out the way, stays on all the time. We'll see you next time for the actual effects.